All right, welcome to Help for the Helpers. So today we're going to be talking about compassion fatigue and burnout. And this topic can be really helpful for folks who are in helping professions, which really includes a lot of students in the College of Education here at USU. And it also actually includes a lot of people who aren't in, a helping profession per se, but even people who, maybe they're the person who their friend group or their family members tend to turn to for help. And so this information can be applicable no matter where kind of in that spectrum you fall. Some of the professions that I think of that I think this information is particularly relevant for include therapists, teachers, medical providers, whether that's doctors, nurses, physical therapists. Any of these professions involve sometimes working with people and sometimes hearing things that are hard to hear. So honestly, I think most people could benefit from learning a little bit about compassion fatigue and burnout and how they work. So let's get into it. So if you would like to download a copy of these slides, they are available. And I've made a tiny URL to make that a little bit more accessible right away for you. And it's at the bottom of most of the slides. I didn't put it on every single slide, but many of them. Okay, so just a quick note. This workshop is provided by me and Dr. Angela Eno at Utah State University. And my position is funded as a collaboration between Utah State University's Counseling and Psychological Services, College of Education and Human Services, and School of Graduate Studies. So each of these partners have kind of come together to make my position and thus this workshop series possible. I want to put in a little plug as well. If you are a graduate student in the College of Education, my position is here in part specifically to support you. So feel free to reach out to me. I provide counseling specific to students in this college. And you can reach me via email. My email will be posted in the description and below this video after the live stream. Or you can also just call Counseling and Psychological Services, CAPS, and they can get you scheduled with me. A quick note, speaking of therapy, this workshop is not intended to be a substitute for mental health care, nor are any of the Healthy Minds weekly live streams meant to be a substitute for that. So if you or anybody else you know is in need of some counseling, I really recommend that you reach out to a therapist for that. We're here to provide some tools that can be useful, but we're definitely not trying to take the place of counseling with these workshops. All right, before even getting into this burnout stuff, I just really want to acknowledge the context that we're dealing with. And I've mentioned this in previous presentations as well, but just keeping in mind, in the time of COVID, the burnout that we're experiencing as human beings in this world in general right now is at an all-time high. None of us signed up for this. None of us signed up for the fear that comes along with COVID being rampant in our world. The way that it has changed the way we interact with others and created a new normal for us, for the risk it takes when we work outside the home, grocery shop, anytime we need to leave. We've also, for some of us who end up working from home, for kind of blurring those boundaries between work and home. All of those things have made burnout just so much more prevalent. We're seeing increases in anxiety and depression. People who've never had it before are starting to show signs. People who've had it before are experiencing increased symptoms. And so this is the context in which we're kind of talking about burnout, is this new world of COVID. We can't just do the same thing by phone or video and have that all be the exact same as it once was. Some parts of our jobs are just so much harder in this new reality that we're living in. Some of the tasks that we once prioritized need to be deprioritized. We have to do things a little differently now. Some of the expectations that we may have held for ourselves and expectations we may have held for others just aren't reasonable anymore. And so this whole setup that we're dealing with now really requires us that we learn to be flexible and stay flexible, that we extend support and understanding to ourselves, to others, especially people we might have positions of power over. Because the fact is we don't know when this is going to end. We don't know when we'll have a sense of normalcy again. And the landscape changes day to day and week to week as the science changes, as this virus changes, it morphs. And the recommendations that we get, for example, from our government changes. And it changes as well as the context around us changes. I know I've experienced, for example, varying degrees of fear and comfort depending on what was happening with the people in my life. Were they getting COVID or not? What was their experience with symptoms? Were people getting vaccinated or not? And I think that's pretty normal. And so I think it's important we keep in mind that our feelings can fluctuate. Our level of distress can fluctuate. And this is the backdrop for basically life in general right now, and certainly the backdrop for this conversation about burnout and compassion fatigue. All right, so let's talk about what is burnout. So technically, according to the World Health Organization, burnout is a very specific syndrome that can only arise related to your occupational context, to the work that you do. And it's characterized by three specific dimensions. So the first one is being really depleted in your level of energy, feeling really exhausted. The second one is feeling increased mental distance from one job, perhaps caring less, maybe feeling negative or cynical about the work that you do. And finally, being less efficient in professional capacities, just not being able to do your work as well and as efficiently as you normally would. Okay. So again, burnout, according to the World Health Organization, is limited to our occupational life and not really in our personal life. I don't know that I 100% personally agree with that, because I think we can get burnout when it comes to being a caregiver in our private lives as well. And sometimes those can kind of look like an occupational capacity, like when we have small children, when we're caring for aging parents, when we have friends and loved ones who are going through trauma, and we need to be there for them. So regardless of what we call it anyway, some of these signs and symptoms can show up. Compassion fatigue is kind of a related idea. And as you'll notice, the definition here of it is pretty similar. And, you know, it's a state of exhaustion that we may experience emotionally, we may experience physically, we may experience both at the same time. That can definitely lead to a diminished ability to empathize with other people or feel compassion for them. Some people call it the negative cost of caring. Some other terms you might have heard thrown around are secondary trauma or vicarious traumatic stress. It often occurs when you are exposed to hearing about other people's trauma a lot, and not exclusively occurs then, but certainly often occurs then. So some of the signs that you might be experiencing on an individual level, burnout and or compassion fatigue. You might be mentally and physically tired, feeling isolated, showing signs of depression. You may have some difficulty focusing and concentrating, feeling more anxious than you normally would, not sleeping as well or at all, taking longer to fall asleep, waking up earlier, waking up throughout the night. You may find that you start drinking or using substances more than you normally would. Appetite changes can go up or down, or kind of fluctuate going up and down. You actually might experience more frequent colds lower immunity, even healing more slowly, starting to feel less satisfied with your life and not feeling a sense of accomplishment. If you find you're not doing very good self-care relative to your normal, you're beginning to neglect your hygiene. You might start to have nightmares and unwanted memories. Now, that might be related to the specific trauma stuff that you're hearing from other people or witnessing, and it might not be related to that at all. So some people, for example, might just start having a lot of violent dreams or apocalyptic dreams showing up that don't necessarily match content-wise with the things that are leading to this burnout and compassion fatigue, but it matches the kind of emotional experience of helplessness, of fear, of suffering. You may start to see some signs of what we call somatizing, which is when your body begins to show a lot of those signs of stress. So some people get stomach pains, they're digesting more slowly or not at all, really, having a hard time holding their food down, kind of butterfly feelings, just pain in your stomach. You might see a lot of muscle aches. And so pay attention to yourself and which muscles tend to get tense when you're really stressed out. So for some people, that's, their lower back. For some people, it's their neck and shoulders. For some people, it might be their stomach. If you start to get more frequent headaches, another sign. If you're feeling more angry or sad than you normally do, beginning to blame yourself for the things that you're hearing about, blame yourself for things that you didn't cause. Blame yourself for, the suffering of other people or your inability to fix it. You might begin to feel a lot more irritable than you normally would and even snapping at other people. Or notice that you're really bottling up your emotions. You're finding it hard to talk about how you feel. You're wanting to maybe even avoid talking about anything that you're feeling. Denial can definitely play a role. So you're not really wanting to look at the fact that this is affecting you and you keep telling yourself, no, I'm fine. But on some level, you understand that you're not okay. Things aren't going all right for you. You might be becoming more negative and more cynical, particularly toward the roles in which you're starting to hear a lot of traumatic things, but you might become more negative and cynical kind of about yourself, about life, about the world around you in general. You might begin to withdraw from your responsibilities, not want to do the things that normally you're passionate about, normally you care about, normally you take seriously. Suddenly, you just don't want to do it anymore. And begin to procrastinate more and more, whether that's procrastination at work, procrastination in your self-care, procrastination of home responsibilities. You might do any of that. Something you might have noticed already if you have some familiarity with the mental health field is these things sound an awful lot like post-traumatic stress disorder or acute stress disorder. They also sound an awful lot like depression and severe anxiety. Well, as it turns out, the symptoms that can show up in caregivers often mirror those of the people carrying trauma that are coming to you. And so that's really no coincidence. And that's part of the reason why this is sometimes referred to as vicarious or secondary traumatic stress. So I wanted to share a couple of tools that can be useful in case you're one of those people who likes to do surveys and likes to do assessments to find out where you're at, or maybe you're a supervisor and you want to share this with people that you supervise. At any rate, here are a couple of different inventories designed to measure burnout. So as you can see, the one that I've put at the top here is one that already has some scientific backing, some studies that have been done to validate this particular scale, and it's available for free online. And if you just click on the name of it, if you download the slides, then it'll take you right to it. And then some other assessment tools are linked here. Some of them have some scientific backing, some do not, as is listed there. Some may have a cost to them and some may not. But I wanted to provide a couple of different resources for you to check out in case you're interested in that. And likewise, here is a scale that I found for measuring compassion fatigue that has some scientific backing to that as well. And again, you can just click on the name of this assessment in order to download that. So a couple of tools that you can check out if you just want to take a measure and see, at least according to these assessments, where you or maybe the people that you work with or the people you supervise might be falling in terms of burnout and compassion fatigue. I also wanted to take a second to talk about collective signs of burnout and compassion fatigue. You know, sometimes these signs do show up on just the individual level and it's one person who's struggling, but oftentimes they show up on the organizational level. So some things that you might notice on a group level, if your organization is beginning to struggle with burnout and compassion fatigue. So people are calling in a lot or not showing up, beginning to struggle among staff, you know, infighting, not working well together, a lot more aggression among people feeling overwhelmed and unable to finish their work. Oftentimes, negative attitudes toward leadership definitely increase. You might see more resistance to change as people, they're kind of at capacity already. They don't really want to take on more change. They don't want to see things shifted that are going to require more kind of cognitive demand on them. Beginning to have kind of an apathy toward the group mission and the group's success, and struggling to believe that improvement is possible for the group. And so, you know, if you're in charge of an organization, or even if you're just part of an organization, you're starting to see some of these signs, it's a good indicator that as a group, you need to start talking about this idea of burnout and compassion fatigue. And how do you support yourselves and how do you support each other to try to combat that as much as you can? So I'm going to talk about kind of a variety of ways that you can combat burnout and compassion fatigue, including some professional and personal coping skills, healthy boundaries, and good self-care. Okay. So this is a pocket card that I actually found this on the same website where I found the measure of compassion fatigue, the ProQOL. And you can go and download a PDF of this card, print it off, laminate it. It specifically says on the website you're welcome to do so and to distribute it widely as long as you don't make any changes. I've added this little square on the top of it just to highlight one particular tool that I think is super helpful when it comes to combating compassion fatigue, and that's using images that make you feel safe and protected in work mode or connected and cared for in non-work mode to help you kind of switch. So I want to talk about some of the things I've heard of from other professionals and some of the things that I've found helpful myself. So here is this is a scene from the Phantom Menace, Star Wars, that I want to share. So one of the things that I always picture when I'm thinking about setting up this kind of imagery that helps me create a shield, I really think about those shields that were over Jar Jar Binks people. You know, when the shots are fired at them, they kind of keep a distance between them and those shots. And sometimes when I'm hearing something that's traumatic, I try to think of myself as being in one of those bubbles. So I'm here to observe, to witness, to be aware, but I'm not here to absorb it into myself. And so I imagine a shield around myself. Some people prefer to think of it as a semi-permeable shield that lets them allow in what they want to let in and to push out what they don't want to keep in. Another possible way of thinking about it that I have sometimes heard and shared with others is to imagine that shield comes up to like about here. So you're here to engage your mind, your knowledge, and support others, but you're shielding your heart so that you're not taking this work home with you. Now that might sound a little bit cold if you're a person who loves people and wants to work with people, but there's a reason why we're doing this. We're doing it so that we can preserve and keep the best version of ourselves available to help all of the people we need to help. If we take in all of the emotional content from other people that's really not ours to take on, and we bring it all into ourselves, then we can struggle to continue doing the work that we do. We can burn out and ultimately not care as much and want to quit. And we can begin to do shoddy work, frankly, supporting the students, the therapy clients, the family members, the loved ones, the patients that we're there to support. So it's a little counterintuitive, but shielding yourself and shielding your heart a bit from taking all of this in can really help you continue to do the important work you do. It's also important to have a way to kind of shift into non-work mode, to be able to have a safe space for yourself, to be able to be emotionally vulnerable when you need to be able to leave that stuff at home. And so one of the tools that I've found really helpful is actually similar to a tool that we often teach therapy clients, which is creating a safe place for you. And so for folks who are not therapists and who haven't already learned this, or maybe who haven't been through therapy to deal with trauma, I've inserted a YouTube video here that you can just click on, and you can watch it from the slides here, or you can watch it on YouTube. But we'll take you through a grounding exercise, which helps you just create your own safe place. This is all just an imagery exercise that can be done, and it can help you kind of transition out of your stressful workday, out of the stressful situation, out of the space in which you're triggered or struggling emotionally, and into a place where you can feel a bit more grounded and safe just through the use of imagery. I find this particular exercise incredibly powerful. Another thing highlighted on this pocket card is developing rituals that help you switch as you start and stop work. So some people might visualize, for example, they're just gonna, as they're walking out their office door, they're leaving everything in their office. I've heard, for example, maybe you picture a container, maybe you have a water bottle in your office, or I've got this little jug here. Picture just putting everything in there and just leaving it there. Picture putting it in a desk drawer. But my favorite thing that I heard from one of the senior staff on my internship at the University of Oregon Counseling Center. And what she did was every single day when she got home from work, she would immediately go change out of her work clothes, take a shower, and just imagine she's washing away everything she's heard today. She's washing away all the work stress, and she's transitioning to being in her home, being in a different mode. And, taking a shower, having some sort of a transition that's very specific and intentional about leaving work home. Just it's a beautiful way. It's metaphorical, and it's a great way to practice some mindfulness, just to help you kind of be where you're at instead of where you were earlier. So it's something I really wanted to mention. I also want to put a plug in here from the workshop that I did last week, which is Self-Care Toolkit. In that workshop, I talk about some of the barriers that can lead us to not want to or not be able to take good care of ourselves. And also I share an assessment that can be really helpful for targeting some of the areas that you can improve your self-care. And it even includes a section on professional self-care. So I really recommend checking that out. I've linked it here in this slide so that you can click right from here and watch it, or you can click it to watch it on YouTube. You can also just find it on the CEHS YouTube channel that you're on right now under the playlist. There's a Healthy Mind playlist, and we'll be putting each Healthy Minds workshop in there as they come out. So check that out. I also want to put in a plug for the next Healthy Minds workshop that I'll be doing, because it's another thing that can be really helpful and very, very crucial in terms of combating compassion fatigue and burnout, and that is getting good sleep. So next week on October 8th, 3:30, I'll be talking about some tools that can help you get good sleep. So I've linked the Healthy Minds playlist here on this slide. You can also join me live on the CEHS channel, just as you've done today, perhaps. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is healthy boundaries. And I know this is tricky, but I'll hopefully give you some tools that can help you do this. So the first step to having healthy boundaries, whether that's in your personal life, in your work life, or both, it's really important to become more self-aware, become more aware of what's happening inside of you. And a good analogy that I have seen for this in my research on compassion fatigue and burnout is thinking about your personal dashboard lights. So if you're driving a car, you can't just kind of willy-nilly drive off without checking, how much gas you have, or if you've got an electric car, how much charge you have left. You have to pay attention to that, because if you don't pay attention to that, you're going to end up stranded somewhere, and you may even do irreversible damage to your car. You don't want to ruin, your vehicle. And so one of the things that we just know, and we learn right away when we're learning to drive, is that when we get in the car, we check to see how much gas we have, and we know how far we can drive approximately on what we have. Well, similarly, it's very important we check in with ourselves to see how much emotional gas do I have today and for this situation. Where am I? Am I in a position where I'm ready to take on this conversation, where I'm ready to provide this support that's being asked of me? If I'm not, is there a way that I can get out of this? Is there a way that I can make this less taxing for me, make it take less gas? It's very important that we don't drive farther than what we have the gas for, that we don't take on more than what we emotionally can handle. And if we're finding over and over again that what we're taking on is exceeding our capacity, well, there are a couple of things we can do. We can reduce what we're taking on, which is where boundaries come into play. Or we can increase our capacity, which is where self-care comes into play. And we can do both of those in tandem as well. So it's very important for us to know when our mind, our heart, our body are giving us information that the energy that we have is being breached. We're giving too much of ourselves. We don't have enough left over for ourselves, or we're letting in things that aren't ours to take on. So it's important to do some reflection on that. So something I'd really encourage you to do is just really think about, what are your personal warning lights? Some of them might be the things that were listed on that burnout slide that we talked about. Some of them might be some of the signs of compassion fatigue. You might also have your own personal warning lights. One of the things I've noticed for myself is that I get stress angry. If I start snapping at people who totally don't deserve it, good sign. If I start struggling to keep up with email, struggling to wake up in the morning, those are all signs that I might be kind of headed down that route. It's very, very, very important that we have boundaries around the work that we do. We have to sometimes turn it off. We have to sometimes disconnect. And sometimes that's in the form of getting enough sleep, like I mentioned before. And sometimes it's in the form of just saying, like, I'm turning off my therapist mind right now. I'm turning off the teacher mind. I'm turning off mom mind. Kids are going to daycare. They're going to go with dad. They're going to go with grandma. They're going to go with the neighbor, whatever it is. And I'm going to have 30 minutes, an hour, a couple of hours to myself to do something other than this. It's very crucial that we have that. So in addition to, checking in with yourself and knowing where you're at with things, we need to identify what are the boundaries that we need to set. Okay. So there are some things we need to consider that definitely play a role in the boundaries we can set, the boundaries we're comfortable setting, the boundaries that make us feel kind of icky about setting or scared to set. And so let's talk about some of those things. I'm sure this is not an exhaustive list. These are just the things that come to mind right off the bat for me. So culture plays a big role in what we think are appropriate boundaries and what are not. Our culture, as well as the culture of people that have power over us, people that we interact with, people we provide services to. And so we might reflect on, okay, what does my culture tell me about what are appropriate boundaries? And what are the cultures of others that are in my kind of sphere of interaction tell them? And if I don't know, maybe that's worth researching and learning a little bit about. to better understand what role culture is playing in how you feel and how others feel about what you're providing and what your boundaries are. There's also family, so families have their own cultures, their own kind of expectations. So what did you learn in the family that you grew up in? And what about your current family? What have you learned about boundaries there? What boundaries have you been allowed to have and not allowed to have? And what do you think about that? Do some reflection about that. Generation makes a really big difference on what we think are healthy boundaries too. So, there are generational differences from parents to grandparents, great grandparents, children. What are the differences in how we view what are appropriate work-life boundaries? What are the appropriate boundaries between parent and child? What is my role in the family? What's your role in the family? How do you differ from the people in generations who've come before you and after you? And I would add, connected to this cultural, familial, and generational context, I would add immigration history of yourself and your family, and how all of that might influence your cultural values, might influence your comfort with boundaries and how they may match and not match other people around you. Those all play a factor and are good things to reflect on. Organizational expectations, of course. So your workplace, the organizations you volunteer for, the school that you're attending, they have expectations about what boundaries you get to have and what boundaries you don't get to have. For example, I would absolutely be delighted if I never had to deal with email again for the rest of my life. I hate email. And yet it's a part of, higher education. It's a part of life for most of us. So email is something that I have to deal with. Even if I'd like to set that boundary, it's something that I can't do. And then finally, the ethics of your profession. And so if you're a student, you may just be beginning to learn that. If you're a professional, hopefully you know a little bit about that. But your profession gives you some guidance in terms of the boundaries that they expect of you. And so doing some reflection on what does your profession say about boundaries and what the boundaries are that you need to set. So if you're still not really sure about the boundaries that you need to set, here are some other resources that can really help you. So start some conversations about boundaries with your colleagues, your supervisors, your faculty members, your mentors. Talk about how they understand their professional boundaries, their personal boundaries. How did they, see what you can learn about their journey of coming to know their boundaries. Reflect on what your role is and your ability to handle situations, and don't take on things that fall outside that role. So this is something I see a lot, for example, with undergraduate peer mentor programs. So there's this kind of like enthusiasm about being a peer mentor. Yes, I'm gonna help people, and so I can take on anything. But remember that you're not a therapist. You're not you're not a professor. You're not responsible for things that fall within those roles. And so do what you can within your role, and remember to stay in your role. You'll reduce your stress. You'll make sure that you're not overextending yourself, and you won't be getting yourself into territory where you're not able to offer the kind of help a person is looking for. So really ask yourself, does this type of help fall within my role? And does it fall within my ability to handle it? And if it doesn't, bring in other people. If you are studying to become a therapist, utilize supervision and consultation. Bring in other people more senior in your field, whatever that field is. Maybe you're studying education. Bring in experienced teachers. Bring in your professors to talk about what's working and what's not working in the boundaries that you're setting now, and how can you improve. Is there somebody else that you can refer someone to? Someone who's come to you for help. You've given what you know how to give, and you have that sense, okay, this falls outside the boundaries of what I know how to do, what I'm supposed to do. Where can you send them? Here at Utah State, there are so many offices available that you can make referrals to. No matter who you are, if there's a student that you're concerned about, you can make a referral to counseling and psychological services CAPS. You can reach out to the Students of Concern, committee in the Office of the Vice President in Student Affairs. There are things that you can do to get some extra help and some extra eyes on a situation for sure. Remember the boundaries of your competence. And this is something that is talked about in some counseling fields. And I don't know, maybe it's talked about within other fields. I would imagine probably medicine, for example. What it really means is that we don't do things, that we don't provide interventions, we don't try to do work that's outside of our level of competence if we don't have somebody who already knows how to do that, who already has that skill set, supervising our work, guiding us in what we do. So when you start to feel a little bit like, I don't know, I'm drinking from a fire hose here, I'm a little overwhelmed, I'm not sure I can handle this, something to ask yourself is, am I trying to do something that I don't quite have the training for, that I don't quite know what to do? And identify who does and how can I get connected to get that help. Talk to people you trust in your life, and that doesn't have to be people in a professional capacity. Maybe your grandma or grandpa is really good at boundaries. Maybe you have a neighbor that you have observed is really good at this stuff and you kind of want to get their perspective. Go for it. Ask them what they think. Okay. You can journal and write a list. Okay, these are some of the things I'm thinking about in terms of the boundaries I might set. Just do some reflecting and see what you come up with. Write down what is bothering me. Where might there be a boundary that I can put in there then? I've also linked a couple of YouTube videos that might be helpful, might not, just a couple of ideas to throw out there. Some advice from other folks on what they think are important boundaries in their lives. So check those out if you'd like a little bit more information about boundaries. I wanted to share a little bit about some very common unhealthy boundaries. And so I found this years ago when I was doing research on the idea of loving detachment, which comes from Al-Anon, the family member and partner and friend version of AA, for people who have a close relationship with somebody that struggles with alcohol. So these are some unhealthy boundaries that all of us can be prone to at times. And so I'd encourage you, as we're going through these, to think about, okay, is this one of mine? Does this one get me? So some of us really can struggle with obsessing about other people's problems, things that don't have anything to do with us whatsoever, but we're so stressed out about other people that we're, maybe even losing sleep over problems that we don't really have any power to solve. That doesn't mean you don't care. It's okay to care, but let's put a boundary around that caring, because if you're spending so much time obsessing about something that you don't have power over, what good is that doing anybody? Whether it's your loved one, your client, your patient, or your student, you don't have control. So how is it helping to think about that constantly? Giving advice when you haven't been asked to give advice is something we often do, all of us do at times. So learning how to step back and say, you know what, not my circus, not my monkeys. It's not my job to solve this problem. I can just support and listen to this person and let them take the problem with them instead of making it mine. Allowing ourselves to be used or abused in the interest of helping others. So extending ourselves beyond what we're really comfortable with, accepting behavior from people that we would not normally accept or that we know we shouldn't accept because we feel bad for them. They've had a hard life. We want to be a good person. That's not what we're supposed to do. You should not accept being treated unfairly or negatively, or having your boundaries trampled just because somebody else is in need of support. You matter as well. It's always important to keep that in mind. Doing for other people what they can do for themselves. Let other people do for themselves, or choose not to do for themselves. That's not up to you, right? Covering up for others' mistakes or misdeeds. Allowing somebody to rely only on you for support. You cannot be everything to everyone. You cannot be everything to one person. Everybody has limits on what they can do. Everybody has times when they just shouldn't and can't be available to other people. So it's important, no matter who this person is in your life, whether it's your parent, whether it's your child, whether it's your student, it's important for you to keep in mind that you are not the only person who plays a role. You are not the only person who has influence here. And to think about, how else might this person be able to get some support besides you? Don't put it all on you. You can't even be the only resource for yourself. You need other people too. We all thrive when we have networks of support. And so it's important to remember that idea of networks. It takes a village, and not put everything on you all the time. It's also important that you not keep secrets that are going to damage your own heart and your mind or make you worry all the time. So if somebody's asking you to keep secrets that are not healthy for you to keep, this is a problem. Get support for yourself. Of course, if you're in a helping profession that involves confidentiality, then the support that you get has to fall within, ethics codes. It has to not violate that confidentiality. So, for example, you might get some consultation from a colleague. You might get your own counseling, something like that, but get some support. Don't carry it all within you. Okay. Another unhealthy boundary we can fall into is to think that we can save someone from themselves. Well, if I just love them enough, I'll love them better, and they'll take better care of themselves and not be so destructive to me and other people. No, you can't save someone from themselves. If someone is self-destructing and they're determined to do so, they're going to do that. You give what you can give, what's reasonable, what doesn't cause damage to you, and you have to let go of the rest. And I know that's hard to do, but it's also important to do. It's not fair to blame yourself for problems that you didn't create. It's okay to feel compassion for those problems, but don't try to take on the blame and feel guilty about things that, you really don't have control over. We've talked about this already, but don't try to offer types of support that you just don't know how to give, things that fall outside those boundaries of competence. Don't try to do that. Don't give so much of yourself to other people that you don't have anything left at the end of the day for you, because you also matter. And in fact, you matter first. And that's not about being selfish. It's about keeping yourself strong so that you can continue to function both for yourself and in the important roles that you serve in your life. Everybody does better when they're around people who are healthy, grounded, doing good self-care. So it's important to leave something for yourself that benefits you, and that's important. And it benefits everybody else, and it models for other people how to take good care of themselves. Don't ever offer to be available 24/7, no matter what, to people. It's just not possible. Sometimes you're not going to be available, so it's not a good idea. You can certainly say, hey, this is the times in which you're welcome to call me. But keep in mind, if you can't get a hold of me, there's other resources available. Okay. And that's always true. It's just always true. Even as a therapist, even as a parent, there's always other resources a person can turn to. And you might think about what are some of those resources and have it in mind, for the roles that you regularly fulfill, so that you can share that with people. Okay. So here are some things to do. Practice letting go of those things that you can't change, those things that are not in your power. Practice respecting other people enough to recognize that they have the right to make their own decisions, even if you hate those decisions, even if you know those decisions are heading in a bad direction for them, they still have the right to make those decisions, right? Especially other adults. Allow other people to experience their own consequences. Don't run around rescuing people from their consequences. Sometimes we have to experience those consequences and experience a little bit of pain in order to grow and learn another way to do things. Give your expectations, both of yourself and of other people, a reality check. Is what you're asking of yourself fair? Is it realistic? Is it really doable? Is it sustainable in the long term? Same goes for what you're asking of other people. Do something good for your own emotional well-being, preferably every day. It doesn't have to take hours. It might take 10 minutes that you do a meditation or turn on some progressive muscle relaxation, that you make sure you get in a minimum of a half hour of exercise, that you read a book that's just for pleasure and not for work. Do something that feeds you emotionally and nourishes you every day. Focus on yourself and what you need to be doing, and less on what other people should be doing with their lives. Okay. I feel like I've beat this like beating a dead horse, so I won't continue on, but realizing there are other resources that can help. Letting people know when there's a limit to what you can do. Here's what I can do. Here's what I can't. Here's when I am available. Here's when I'm not. Talk to someone who can help if you start to become overwhelmed or afraid. Reach out. Don't keep it all inside. Don't think people are going to find you to be incompetent. Just share what's going on with you and get some input. And this is a big one. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for not being able to ease the suffering of the entire world and every person who comes across you, because no one can do that. And what you do does matter. Just witnessing it, just being there, just caring, it does matter. And it's okay if that's not enough to change a situation. You've got to forgive yourself for that, not beat yourself up for the fact that you can't fix everything in the world. Okay. So we've talked about the first two steps in having healthy boundaries. The first one is checking in with yourself and knowing what your kind of personal dashboard lights are saying. What are your red flags, your signs that you need to slow down? We've talked about some strategies for helping you begin to identify the boundaries that you need to set, identify where your boundaries are too loose, identify, when you're doing things that are unhealthy and what you might be doing that could be a little more healthy or could do. All right, so the next step, step 3 in having healthy boundaries, is to ground yourself and do some self-care as preparation for maintaining your boundaries. So when we have to communicate a boundary, when we have to maintain a boundary, it's easier for us to do that when mentally and emotionally we're in a good place. So as I mentioned before, there's that self-care toolkit workshop that you can watch to learn a little bit about self-care. But I also included some other resources on this slide here that you can check out. Grounding techniques, progressive muscle relaxation. I pasted that creating a safe place link here again. Some meditations that you can use. So check some of these out and see if any of them are helpful in helping you get into a place where you feel prepared, you feel centered, you're ready to identify and set a boundary and maintain it as you walk into work, as you walk into this conversation with a family member, as you go back home and get ready to deal with your kids, as you call grandma on the phone, whatever it is that you're going to be doing. Get yourself grounded and do some self-care. Step 4, communicate well. So it is important the way that we communicate those boundaries meet a couple of criteria. So first, we want to be kind. You don't have to snap at somebody or blow up at them to tell them a boundary. Some of us kind of think we have to, or some of us think that it's just inherently mean to set a boundary, but it's really not. Other people appreciate knowing what the limits are and what they can expect from you and what they can't. So communicate it in a way that's kind. Communicate it with confidence. You want to reflect in your body language and in the words that you say that you're sure about this boundary. You have a reason for it, and it is what it is. Be as clear and direct and specific as you can be, in communicating that boundary. And of course, all of this is, you want to make sure you're communicating in a way that's culturally appropriate, for the context that you're interacting with and the person you're interacting with. So take that with a grain of salt as well and consider culture and the way that you communicate it. And you want to be predictable and consistent. So if you set a boundary and sometimes you enforce it, but sometimes you don't, that just encourages people to test the waters a little bit and to push that boundary. So it's better for you and better for other people if everyone knows what to expect from you. Everyone knows what you will and won't do. Okay. If you struggle with some of that confident communication and and setting and maintaining boundaries. There are a couple of links I've included here that you can check out to some YouTube videos that talk about confident body language, that talk about how you might go about setting a boundary. Last step, step 5, stick to it. So if somebody is pushing those boundaries, trying to get you to relax them, and you know this boundary that you've chosen is ethical, it's good for you, it's definitely the boundary that you've identified that you need. You've checked it out with your mentors, you've checked it out with your family. You know this is the boundary that you need. Just be a broken record and keep setting that boundary. And so this video that I've linked here gives a good example of being that broken record. Somebody's saying to you, well, it's not fair. Well, I want this. Well, you used to blah, blah, blah. That may be true. And yet, this is my boundary. Okay. I just wanted to also share this great resource that I came about. It's compassionfatigue.org. It has a wealth of material. It has books, it has videos of TED Talks, it has a really cool thing called the Caregiver's Bill of Rights that you could check out that I found super interesting and validating and can be really useful, regardless of what kind of caregiver you might be. So I wanted to put a plug in there for checking out that website. And then finally, I just want to share a little bit about upcoming Healthy Minds workshops. So last week we did the self-care toolkit. You can watch that already on the playlist, Healthy Minds playlist on the CEHS YouTube channel. Today, Help for the Helpers. Next week, Tools for Better Sleep. We're going to skip fall break. And then we're going to talk about something called progressive muscle relaxation, which is so great for helping you get ready to sleep, for helping with anxiety and panic. It's wonderful if you have chronic pain. Just a really great way to unwind. So we're actually going to practice it together on the Healthy Minds workshop live stream next Friday, or not next Friday, pardon me, the 22nd of October. After that, we're going to do Your Mind Lies to You, challenging anxious and depressive thinking. I'll talk about common thinking patterns that people can fall into that have a tendency to increase anxiety and depression, and how you can challenge those. On November 5th, I'll be talking about tools for getting through a crisis. And that crisis might include something really big going on that you would definitely know is a crisis, but it could also be something like a panic attack that's showing up, and how to get through that, get on with your day. We're going to talk about grief on November 12th. And November 19th, we're going to talk about a tool for stopping impulsive behaviors, doing things in the heat of the moment that you just wish you didn't do. We'll skip the week of Thanksgiving. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about, am I crazy or is something wrong here? So I'll be talking about signs of unhealthy relationships, including relationship abuse. And that can apply to romantic relationships, but it can also apply to family relationships, work relationships, any kind of relationship. So if you're in a relationship that sometimes makes you think you might be crazy, or a relationship in which you think something's going wrong, I really recommend you check that out and gain some clarity from that. December 10th, we'll be talking about relationship effectiveness and how do you balance your needs, your relationship, and your self-respect. And then finally, December 17th, we'll be talking about positive psychology and the lessons we can learn from that on how to have a happier life. If you have ideas for other topics, please do reach out and email me. I'd love to hear it. And I would absolutely love to do some workshops based on questions or ideas proposed by people who are watching the workshop series. I also welcome any feedback, positive or negative, that you might have about the workshop so far. Just go ahead and email me at angela.eno@usu.edu. I'll be posting that in the comments after this live stream. If you didn't catch that or don't know how to spell my last name, don't worry, it'll be there. All right, and that is it for today. If you joined, thank you for joining. Thank you for watching this later if you did. And we'll see you again next week.